Good morning, everyone. So for today's video lesson, we will be learning about perfect square trinomials. A perfect square trinomial is a trinomial that is the square of a binomial. So when we say trinomial, that means it has three terms, while binomial here has two terms. So the question is, how do we know if a trinomial is a perfect square? So there are only two conditions that you must remember. First is that the first term and the last term of that trinomial should be perfect squares, and it should also be positive. And the second condition is that the middle term of your trinomial should be twice the product of the squared terms. So for example, we have here x squared plus 2xy plus y squared equals to x plus y squared. So if you can see here that the first term is a perfect square. So if we're going to rewrite this, this is actually the squared term of x. And your last term is a perfect square. We're writing this as y squared. So both of them are also positive. So that means condition 1 is checked. So how about condition 2? Condition 2 is the middle term should be twice the product of your squared terms. So that would be 2 times x times y. So 2 times x times y is equal to 2xy. So therefore, this is a perfect square trinomial. And to factor a perfect square trinomials, that is based on a definition here that it is just the square of a binomial. So where do we get this binomial? So we will form the binomial by getting the squared term of the first term, so that is x, and the squared term of your last term, which is y. And then we square this binomial. So that would be the factors of your perfect square trinomial. So how about if the middle term is negative? So if the middle term is negative, then your factors would be x minus y squared. So again, remember that there are only two conditions you must check in order to say that it is a perfect square trinomial. First is that the first term and the last term should be positive and it should be a perfect squares. And the second condition is that the middle term of the perfect square trinomial is always twice the product of the two terms in the squared binomial. If that is the case, then you can write the factors of that trinomial as a square of a binomial. So let's have some examples. Here, we're going to determine whether the given trinomial is a perfect square. And if it is a perfect square, we need to factor the trinomial completely. So we're going to write to determine if the first term and the last term are perfect square. So x squared is a perfect square, and the last term, which is 16, is a perfect squared of 4. The middle term should be twice the product of these two. So we have plus 2 times x times 4. So we have 8x. So therefore, to write the factors of your x squared plus 8x plus 16, just get this x and this, and then we square that binomial. So this is just like getting the square root of the first term. The square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 16 is 4. Now let's have the second example. So we have x squared minus 8x plus 16. So the first term is a perfect square. The last term is also a perfect square. However, notice that the middle term is a negative number. So therefore, 4 here should be negative, because negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. So it doesn't change anything. So to check if the middle term is correct, we will just multiply 2 times x times negative 4. And this is equal to negative 8x. So therefore, if we're going to write the factors of this polynomial or this trinomial, we will square the binomial, which is comprised of the first term, or the square root of your first term, and the square root of your second term. That would be x minus 4 squared. Let's have the next example. We have 9x squared minus 6x plus 1. So 9x squared is a perfect square of 3x squared, and 1 is also a perfect square. But take note that the middle term is negative, so therefore 1 here should be negative. To check if the middle term is correct, we will just multiply 2 times the squared term, which is 3x, and the squared term of the last term, which is negative 1. So 2 times 3x times negative 1 is negative 6x. So therefore, it's correct. Now, we could write the factors of this perfect square trinomial by putting the first term here, minus 1 squared. Now let's have the next example. So we have x squared minus 9x plus 81. So we will rewrite this as x squared because this is a perfect square, and also 81 is a perfect square of 9 squared. However, again, our middle term is negative, therefore 9 here should be negative. And to check for the middle term, we will just multiply 2 times the term, or the squared term, which is x, and the squared term of the last term, which is negative 9. So 2 times x times negative 9, that is negative 18x. Therefore, number 4 is not a perfect square trinomial. Therefore, we cannot factor it as the square of a binomial. Okay, let's have the next example. So we have x to the 6 plus 10x cubed plus 25. So x to the 6th power is a perfect square trinomial. So this is actually, we could rewrite it as x cubed squared. And 25 is also a perfect square of 5. So to check the middle term, if it's correct, we will just multiply 2 times the squared term, which is x cubed, times the squared term of 25, which is 5. So to multiply, that would be 2 times x cubed times 5, and that is equal to positive 10x cubed. So therefore, this is a perfect square trinomial, and we could write the factors of this as the squared term of the first term, which is x cubed, plus the squared term of the last term, which is 5, and then we square it. So this is now the square of a binomial. Let's have another example. So we have x squared minus 6x plus 9. So again, we will rewrite the first term as a squared term, so that would be x squared, and 9 is a perfect square. So we write it as a squared term of 3. But here, take note that this is a negative term. So therefore, 3 should be negative here. And to check for the middle term, we will just multiply 2 times the first term, the squared term here, times the squared term of the last term, which is negative 3. 2 times x times negative 3 is negative 6x. So therefore, this is a perfect square trinomial, And so we can write the factor of this as x minus 3 squared. Let's have the next example. So we have 4x to the fourth plus 36x squared plus 81. So we will rewrite the first term as a squared term. So that would be 2x. 2x squared, and 81 is a perfect square, so that would be 9 squared. And then to check for the middle term, we will just multiply 2 times this. This is 2x squared times the squared term of 81, which is 9. So therefore, 2 times 2x squared times 9. So that would be plus 36x squared. So therefore, this is a perfect square trinomial. And so the factors would be 2x squared plus 9 squared. Let's have some more example. Okay, so we have here x to the 6th power plus 8x cubed plus 64. So again, we will write this as a squared term. So that would be x cubed squared. And 64 is a perfect square of 8. So that would be 8 squared. And to check for the middle term, we will just multiply 2 times the squared term of the first term, which is x cubed, and the squared term of the last term, which is 8. So 2 times x cubed times 8, that is 16x cubed. So therefore, this is not a perfect square trinomial. So therefore, we cannot factor it. So next, let's have another example. So we have x squared plus 10x minus 25. So here, x squared is a perfect square of x squared. And negative 25 is actually not a perfect square because we cannot get the square root of negative numbers. So therefore, this is not a perfect square trinomial. And remember, condition number 1. Okay, so let's have the next example. So we have x squared minus 24xy plus 144y squared. So x squared is again a perfect square, so that is x squared. And 144 is actually a perfect square of 12y squared. To check, and remember this is a negative term, so therefore the squared term of 144y squared should also be negative. So to check for the middle term, we will just multiply 2 times the squared term x times the squared term of the last term, which is negative 12y. And then we multiply, we get negative 24xy. So therefore, this is a perfect square trinomial. And so we can write the factors as x minus 12y squared. And for the last example, we have 2x cubed plus 28x squared plus 98x. So we can see here that the first term and the last term are not perfect square, although they both are positive. So what do? We check if there is a GCF between the terms of this trinomial. And we can see that the GCF here is 2x. So therefore, we divide each of the terms by 2x. So we get the remaining factors as x squared plus 14x plus 49. And then we check if this is a perfect square trinomial. Yes, it is a perfect square trinomial because the first term is a perfect square and the last term is also a perfect square of 7 squared. And the middle term would be 2 times the squared term, which is x, times the squared term, which is 7. This is plus 14x. Therefore, the factors of this trinomial is x plus 7 squared. So therefore, the factors of 2x cubed plus 28x squared plus 98x is equal to, don't forget to write the GCF, which is 2x, and also the square of the binomial, which is x plus 7 squared. So this is the factors. So that's the end of our video lesson. Thank you and have a good day. God bless everyone.